Hi everyone, it's Melissa, and today I am going to talk about the books that I read in June. I read 7 books last month, and overall it was a super successful reading month for me. So we're going to start with the books that I read for the BookTube spin. So there were 2 books, and I liked them both. The first is The Invention of Hugo Cabre. It doesn't have the dust jacket because this is secondhand, but this is a middle grade book, and it's the book on which the movie Hugo is based. And it's just super whimsical. I really loved the setting. It takes place in this like train station in Paris, and we follow an adolescent boy who had basically been an apprentice to his uncle, learning how to be a, like, I think they call it a timekeeper or a clock. Basically the person who takes care to make sure that all of the clocks at the station are all synchronized and showing the right time. One day his uncle doesn't come back. No one knows that his uncle is gone because the boy, Hugo, has been like winding the clocks and making sure that all the clocks are still on time. He's living with his uncle because his father had passed away sometime earlier, and his father was really into like mechanics and inventions, and so was Hugo. So I really enjoyed kind of that element of like the mechanics and clockwork, and there's like this automaton that Hugo is trying to rebuild, and just that whole element was just really well done. The setting is great. It takes place in the, I want to say 1920s or 30s. The illustrations are great. So it's not a graphic novel, but it is illustrated, so there will be sections of text like that, and then there will be sections of illustrations where there will be some full page spreads like this, and I just thought that was balanced really well. So overall I just thought the illustrations were really great, whimsical, loved the setting, and very imaginative. So that's Hugo Cabre. The next book I read for the BookTube spin, I also read as part of a reading vlog where I was reading your suggestions of what I should read from my physical TBR. And this book was The Wonder by Emma Donaghue, and this I loved so much I can barely put it into words. I am not going to talk at length about this in the next one, the ones that I read for the reading vlog, because I talk quite in depth about them there. So if you want my more full impressions of the book, you can check that out. I will give you kind of basic bullet points of what I thought about this. First of all, what it's about is a nurse has been sent. She's an English nurse. She's been sent to the Irish countryside. This is the 1830s. No, it's not. It's the 1850s. It's the 1850s. She's been sent to Ireland because there is a girl whose family and whose community is claiming she hasn't eaten anything in months, and the nurse alongside another nurse who is a nun are tasked with setting up watch to see if she's being snuck food, to see if she's stealing food, or to see if this is a genuine miracle. So that's the premise. And what I loved about this book is the strong historical setting. It had a really good like sense of place and time. It had absolutely great characters, fascinating characters. I loved the mystery element, trying to find out what is going on. And I liked the themes of like religion and like family relationship. Another book I read for that vlog, which I also loved, is The 13th Tale by Diane. Setterfield. This is about a reclusive author who's very famous, and she wants to get her story told. She's kind of an unreliable narrator. She's done interviews in the past, but all of her there are several versions of her story out there, and she's kind of known to just like not have ever told the truth about, you know, who she is or where she's from or her backstory, her family, or anything. And this amateur biographer has been chosen by the author to basically write her story. So she goes to this author's like giant estate and stays there with her, and every night is like taking notes as this author is revealing her life story. In short, what I loved about this, the Gothic elements I thought were expertly executed. The atmosphere is just like so perfect. I loved the pacing and the kind of like mystery elements, like how you're learning about things piece by piece and how you're not sure what's real and what's not. I like how all of the truth, the bits of truth are kind of meted out throughout the story. So I thought the pacing was great. I think it had the feel of like a classic suspense novel, and that just worked really well. This could have fizzled out at the end so easily, and it didn't. I loved it from front to back. And the last book I read as part of that vlog was Space Opera by Catherynne M. Valente. This is about the not too distant future where aliens have contacted Earth because we are on the precipice of potentially becoming dangerous to the rest of the galaxy. And whenever this happens, species in the galaxy will make the budding species, the progressing species, take part in this singing competition in order to fight for their planet and to prove that they are sentient. And it was a lot of fun, and the more I think about it, the more I think that this would make a really fun movie, maybe. There was a lot of really just like fun vibes, but with keeping this kind of undercurrent of like social commentary about like how awful humans are, basically, and that we're trying to prove that we're sentient and worth keeping around, and that we're not monsters, but like we've done all these monstrous things. My problem with the book was some of the humor got buried because there were like too many jokes and quippy things like in the same sentence. So I found the sentences a bit too dense and bogged down with too many jokes, and so other jokes would get buried. And so I think it was a bit overwritten, but I think like it's still funny. I just think that I probably lost a lot of the jokes in the writing. I really enjoyed the world building in this, and one of my favorite parts of it was definitely meeting the other species. And for most of them, there's a chapter devoted to kind of like the backstory of that species and how they came to sentience, and like what their world is like and what their culture is like, and what they as like anatomically and physiologically are like, and their values and stuff like that. And I found learning about all the different species, like that was my favorite part of the book, and that's what I think was the most fun. I think the through line of the plot, I don't really think matters, actually. I think that the world building is like the strongest part of this. Blankets by Craig Thompson. So this is a graphic memoir that I really enjoyed. It's his coming of age story. It's about his first love in high school. The author grew up in a very religious household. I want to say like fundamentalist Christian, but I don't know that he names it as such. He just says they were really religious and like very strictly religious. And there's definitely, you know, some things that happen in this book that are like hard in that way. And it was interesting to see him change over time and how his attitudes changed, especially in regards to himself. He feels a lot of guilt throughout his adolescence about things he thinks, like attraction he has for for women and how he's like dirty and sinful, when really he's just, attracted to somebody. And it was interesting to see how his thoughts about himself and his feelings change as he grows up. But yeah, I also really liked the family dynamics, the relationship that he talks about with his brother. And I think it really just depicts that first love and like the passion you feel and like first heartbreak and all those kinds of emotions, I think really came through. The next book I want to talk about is Last Night at the Telegraph Club by Malinda Lo. I read this as an ebook. Absolutely loved it. Because it was a YA, it was very easy to read, very page-turny, even though it wasn't like a thriller or anything. It's, a coming of age story. The characters, the protagonists were very relatable, and even though these were problems that I didn't necessarily have, just remembering what it was like what worrying about your social status and like those kinds of things, I think the author just did that really well, and you really feel for Lily, the main character. So this is set in early 1950s in San Francisco. Lily is the daughter of Chinese Americans. Her father immigrated and her mother was born in America, and Lily was born in America as well. They live in Chinatown in San Francisco, and Lily is really interested in rockets and space exploration because early 1950s, her aunt works as a computer at the propulsion lab in, where was it? Somewhere in California. I can't remember. The Jet Propulsion Lab. Where was that? I don't remember. It doesn't matter. The point is she's really into this. She wants to do well in school so she can go to university and study mathematics and get involved in working in that field. And at the same time, as she's a senior in high school, she is discovering her sexuality and that she is gay. She doesn't really have a word for that, but you watch her kind of blossom and come into her own that way. She ends up forming a relationship with another girl at school, and they go and visit this gay bar, the Telegraph Club, that is not in Chinatown, but close by. And so they sneak out at night and go watch this male impersonator, and she basically learns about the gay scene and the gay community in San Francisco. So like I said, it was really easy to read because it's a YA, but I really enjoyed the writing, and I don't think it was overly simplified. I think there's a lot of things going on in the novel that kept it really engaging and made me think about a lot of different things. And I thought the characters were really well developed, and again, it kind of like harkens back to those high school days, and it really made me remember the people that I knew who were like this person or like that person, and reading about these social dynamics play out was very true to life. And I thought all of the things in the book really made it a richer story. So we have the stuff going on about the gay community, especially in San Francisco, and life as a teenager and figuring out who you are, especially figuring out that you are gay and what that means during the 1950s, especially. And then the intersection of the fact that Lily is Chinese American and has this kind of like, I'm a good Chinese daughter type of like identity, and that's how she's been raised, and that there are certain like cultural and family expectations of her. And then added in, because of this time period, the Red Scare with communism and Chinese immigrants being deported, and it just made for a very like rich story. And it was just a joy to watch Lily discover herself and her sexuality and discover the gay community around her. And yeah, I just absolutely loved this. And the last book I read was Seven Fallen Feathers by Tanya Talaga. I listened to this on audio and I forgot to note the narrator's name, so I will put that in the comments or in the description below. But this is a nonfiction that I really, really enjoyed. Enjoyed isn't the right word. It's very challenging and hard to read, but I thought it was really well done. So it's a book essentially about racism in Canada towards Indigenous people and the intergenerational trauma passed down from our residential school system and how that is affecting youth today, especially from remote northern communities. That's what it's kind of tackling and looking at. And the author does so by looking at 7 students who were found dead in Thunder Bay, Ontario. So these 7 students all disappeared and died within the span of, I think it was 11 or 12 years. And they were all Indigenous from more remote Indigenous communities and moved to the city of Thunder Bay to continue their education because Canada has not given access to Indigenous children access to education in the same way. There are lots of communities that don't have access to decent education at the high school level. And so if they want to continue on in high school or if they want a decent education, they have to move at like 14, 15 years old to cities, in this case to Thunder Bay. And these are children who oftentimes don't have a lot of support there in Thunder Bay, who are living with basically foster families while they're there. They are hundreds and hundreds of miles away from family and from communities that they know. And these are children who often have never been in a city before, don't really know much about how to live in a city, and they're removed from all of their family and all of their support and culture and what they know. Talaga looks at each child more than just the 7 children. She also goes back farther to talk about the residential school system and its legacy today. But she looks at each of the 7 children. She gives you their like family history, what their life was like in their community, what their life was like in Thunder Bay. And each child's life was different. No two had exactly the same story. They came from different types of family situations, had different levels of support, but they were all connected through being from remote Indigenous communities, having little to no experience living in a city. Like some of these kids, I think most of them, hadn't seen like traffic lights before, and they also have the shared experience of racism that they experience in Thunder Bay, and the history of the residential school system. I think it really lays everything out so you can see all of those connections weaving together. And I would recommend it to anybody, but I think especially Canadians who still don't really know or understand how this is related to what had happened with residential schools decades ago. I think this is like required reading. Those were the books I read in June. As always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll chat soon. Take care. Bye.